to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. A tweet from veteran boxing scribe Dan Raphael. Top Rank Boxing and Team Norman tell me Brian Norman is dealing with a left hand injury, which has forced him out of his first defense against Derek Cuevas, scheduled for November 8th on ESPN+. Plans are to reschedule the bout early next year.
Reschedule?
Well, listen.
Look.
If he's fighting Derek Cuevas early next year, he's not fighting Jaron Ennis early next year. That's how that sounds.
No Jaron Ennis, no Eman Stanionis, no Mario Barrios, no unifications.
No nothing. And this is supposed to have been better than Brian Norman accepting the $1.7 million he was offered to unify titles with Jaron Ennis. Now, I don't know that he still would have gotten injured if he would have accepted that offer, but that's not the point.
Maybe he would have.
But that's not the point. I noticed that more people aren't talking about this. I mean, you would have thought that Brian Norman was the hottest thing smoking in the welterweight division, the way so many randoms went up to bat for him, demanding that Matchroom, that Eddie Hearn, give him more money. All of a sudden, a guy who was flying way low on the radar had a lot of people in his corner.
Seemingly.
The debate raged on for something like 2 or 3 weeks. Who was in the right? Who was in the wrong? Eddie's cheaping out. He's failing Jaron Ennis. He's not really invested. He's not willing to spend what he needs to. That's what people were saying, all because he wouldn't break the bank for Brian Norman, even though Top Rank won't break the bank for Brian Norman, and they actually promote him.
They ain't cracking open a piggy.
Heard people saying things like, now Jaron Ennis is going to have to travel to Germany and fight Karen Chukatsian again, fight Karen Chukatsian there. Matchroom is failing Jaron Ennis. That's what they were saying.
They aren't saying much of anything now, though, are they?
They don't dispense the praise as readily as they dispense the criticism that Matchroom ensured Jaron Ennis is fighting at home. The fight is going to happen in Philly, not in Germany.
They don't dispense the praise as readily as they dispense the criticism.
When Brian's fight was canceled as a result of this hand injury, because we've known about this for some days now, you know, I listened out and I didn't hear a collective, "Oh!" If I didn't know better. It's almost like nobody cared about his fight. Nobody cared about the Cuevas fight. Nobody really cares about Brian Norman. It was all just bullshit. The extent of their interest in Brian had everything to do with Boots, but once Boots was out of the picture, they weren't interested because they don't really support Brian, they just dislike Boots. The proverbial mean girls of boxing decided they'd rather not see unification matches at this weight, all so they can slight Boots, spite Boots. It's because of the Crawford stuff, and I understand that some people might have a bone to pick with Boots over the Crawford stuff, but that conversation is dead. Time for that is over.
Time for unifications is here. Unless you want welterweight, you want the welterweight division to turn out to be more like the middleweight division.
Bunch of champions holding their belts hostage. No unification matches. None in sight. Nobody's trying. You want that for welterweight. The only guy with enough money behind him to make unification matches happen at 147 is Boots.
14,000 in Philly.
Saw people acting like that's something to sneeze at when Brian Norman could never get that many people to watch him fight. Neither could Eman Stanionis or Mario Barrios. That is, not by themselves. Boots was able to do that with what isn't a big-name opponent.
So just imagine for a unification match, where did everybody's common sense go?
Out the window, because these guys are the emotional types. They care more about spiting Boots than what's best for the division, what's best for the sport, to keep things going, keep the momentum going.
Why are you mad?
And this is how these guys watch boxing. This is the lens, the filter they use to view the sport. The cattiness, the pettiness, the drama. Not the actual fights, not the actual boxing.
Why are you mad?
It's the bickering that engages them the most and holds their attention the most.
Morons.
So Brian is fighting Derek early next year. I think what Top Rank are doing is they're keeping Brian in their back pocket so they can revisit the Teofimo Lopez fight. That's the biggest fight that they can put Brian in, and that's the closest title they can get for Teofimo.
Outside of that, they ain't got much options for either one of those two fighters.
So you put Brian in the Cuevas fight in, say, late January or February. That would put a potential Lopez fight, barring illness or injury, sometime in late spring or early summer, midsummer. But if Brian is going to be spoken for that amount of time, It's for that amount of time he's not unifying.
You think that's a good thing?
I don't, but they do, because these people are morons.
Idiots.
Men's middleweight news. A few choice words from Andre Mikhailovich, who's going to be challenging Janibek this Friday morning, if you're in America, for one of his alphabet titles, I think. I'm still not sure. Andre said, I don't really appreciate the way he's talked about me and how he's talked about these other champions. Last time I checked, you have to get rid of me first. I don't think he understands what's about to happen to him.
Maybe he doesn't. Maybe none of us do. Janibek has been promising a knockout, but these are less than favorable circumstances for Janibek. It's not just that he has to travel to Australia for this fight to fight under the No Limit Promotions banner.
Yeah, Top Rank is broadcasting the show via their ESPN Plus deal, but it very much is a No Limit Promotions show, and Andre very much is a No Limit Promotions fighter.
The skinny.
You're telling me that Top Rank lost the purse bid, the rights to this fight, for a meager $1,000. They got beat out by $1,000. No Limit bid $351,000. Top Rank bid $350,000.
Not even $500,000.
If you want to know what they think the fighter is worth, well, look at what money they put up. Look at how little. $350,000 for an unbeaten unified middleweight champion. That's all they put up. Clearly, they weren't that invested. They weren't that pressed to win the rights to this fight.
So now Janibek's got to travel to Australia, and get this, he's just now getting there.
At the beginning of this week, they said that on Wednesday, Janibek would be flying out to Australia.
Why is that important?
It's a 16, 17-hour flight. That's why that's important. 16, 17 hours. Jet lag, my friend. Ideally, you fly out a week ahead of the fight. A week to give your body time to acclimate to its new surroundings. The way it broke down, Janibek's only got a few days.
Not even a few days, a little over 2. Just 2.
And that's not all. He may have to deal with a second day weigh-in. He may have to deal with a 10-pound rehydration cap. Even though he's a unified champion, for some reason, there's a lot of confusion as to whether or not it's going to be 1 alphabet title on the line or 2. But if it's just 1, if it's just the 1, if it's just the IBF, then he's going to have to deal with a rehydration cap.
Remember why this fight got postponed. This fight was supposed to have happened already, but because Janibek was dehydrated at the weigh-in, they had to move it.
This fight was supposed to have gone down weeks ago, but because Janibek fell ill, he collapsed. Due to dehydration, they had to move it. So surely you can see why a guy who just had a very hard cut, he was dehydrated, surely you can see why a 10-pound weight cap ain't doing him no favors.
I don't even understand this, because he's the unified champion. They're his 2 alphabet titles. If he wants them on the line, what's the problem? What's happening?
These unfortunate circumstances that are less than favorable for the traveling champion. Andre's got bad intentions. Andre's got bad intentions, and he's a talker, this kid is. He can talk, he can sell himself, he can sell a fight. I've seen him.
He didn't blow me away.
Nothing really stands out. Has the look of a mid-range to inside offensive fighter, very aggressive with leaky defense. The thing is, if he's getting a less than perfect Janibek
under circumstances that are less than ideal,
suddenly it's not about Andre, it's about whether or not Janibek will be able to hold up. His mettle is about to be tested. Breaking down a fight, sometimes you have to look at it through 2 filters, 2 lenses. There's the way the fighters fight, what history tells you, what the footage available shows you.
That's trapped in time.
Then there are the outlying factors. That is the second filter, the second lens. There is the way the fighters fight, and that's all well and good, but every fight doesn't happen under the same circumstances. Now Janibek is traveling, so what about jet lag? What about the weight cut?
Gotta factor that into it too.
All things even, I would favor Janibek to beat Andre. I'd go as far as saying, as all things even, Janibek would knock him out. But all things ain't even.
Saw something that said, if Janibek loses the fight, the only title Andre's gonna win is the IBF title. The WBO title would remain vacant. Would that be better for this division if Janibek loss.
Andre would become IBF champion. The WBO title would presumably go to the #1 contender, and the #1 contender is Queensbury's own Hamza Shiraz. Comparatively, I get the sense that Queensbury is a lot more invested in Hamza than Top Rank is invested in Janibek.
What the hell does that even mean?
That means, you asshole, that to get Shiraz the big fights, Queensbury would spend the big money. The big money that Top Rank isn't going to spend on Janibek. Frank Warren is in bed with Turkey.
In a situation where Hamza Shiraz is elevated to full WBO champion, the moment he wants to unify, the money is there to do it. To lure Carlos Adames out, Arislandi Lara out, Andre.
Hell, Andre might be the first guy they go after if he beats Janibek. So when you look at it like that, Janibek losing the fight could be the catalyst that gets things shaking, rattling, and rolling at middleweight in a way that they haven't in a very long time.
So you want him to lose?
I didn't say that. I'm just saying it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world or the worst thing for the division if he did. The Janibek experiment, it just isn't working out.
I ain't wishing nothing on that guy.
Though you know why they signed him. They hoped to have the success with Janibek Alimkhanalai from Kazakhstan that Tom Loeffler had with Gennady Golovkin from Kazakhstan. You know that's who they were thinking of when they signed this guy. But this guy ain't no Golovkin.
It's not a knock on him. Those are big shoes to fill.
I wish him the best in Australia. I wish him the best on Friday morning. But I'm starting to wonder what's going to happen.
I don't know if he's going to stay a champion. We'll see.
And finally, Hall of Fame promoter Bob Arum took to his social media and stated, Christian Mbilli is now the #1 contender by way of the WBC and the WBA for the super middleweight crown held by Canelo Alvarez. A Mbilli fight against Canelo in May would be a tremendously exciting spectacle, since Mbilli is an all-action, non-stop puncher, which is true. He's not overselling it. Canelo versus Mbilli would be a satisfying fight, a fan-friendly fight, and worth the money, though stylistically, it's basically the Munguia fight all over again. That's what it would be. Pressure fighter versus boxer puncher. I know some of you like to think of Canelo as a pressure guy himself, but he's not.
He doesn't have a pressure guy's work rate. He doesn't spend all 3 minutes of a round trying to fight, trying to throw. Canelo does far too much sharpshooting and punch picking for that. He applies pressure, but he's not a pressure fighter.
Mbilli is. Mbilli is a textbook pressure guy. He's trying to spend all 3 minutes of a round in your face, invading your space. Against Canelo, that would be his undoing. That would be to his detriment. You saw how he just looked with a Sergey Derevianchenko that's pushing 40. So what would Canelo do to him? I know that Canelo's not knocking guys out the way that he used to, but how much can Mbilli really take? He was just in there with Sergey, and for several rounds, Sergey was fighting with one hand. One good hand.
Doing good, too.
While Canelo isn't knocking guys out the same way that he used to, we don't really know how much Christian Mbilli can endure. Not really, not with someone on the level of a Canelo Alvarez. The right punch gets in, Canelo might fold him up. And remember, if Mbilli gasses out, if he burns through the midnight oil, that just makes it easier to knock him out.
If he tires.
And he might, because he hasn't faced as accurate a puncher and as strong a puncher as a Canelo Alvarez. So even if Canelo's not as good for a knockout as much as he used to be, it still might happen.
I like the fight.
At minimum, you know that Christian is going to give it a go. He's going to really try more than Jermel Charlo did, more than Edgar just did.
Right?
Though a bit of common sense. Bob and Todd and Carl, all the guys at Top Rank have got to know that even with the sanctioning bodies ranking your fighter at #1, that hardly guarantees him a Canelo Alvarez fight. Look at David Benavidez.
Via the WBC, William Skull via the IBF.
Push comes to shove, Canelo Alvarez is going to do whatever he feels like doing. And if he doesn't feel like fighting your fighter, then he's not. I don't even know that Canelo has Christian on his radar. I mean, does he even know the man?
Probably not.
Does he even know who Christian Mbilli is? I don't think so.
Here's the common sense part.
If I know this, and you know this, then Bob knows this, Carl knows this, Todd knows this, they know.
Here's the common sense part.
Maybe the end game isn't necessarily getting Christian a Canelo fight because they know they can't bank on that. Maybe it's more about getting at Canelo's belts. They know that Canelo is not as invested in hanging on to those alphabet titles as he used to be. He just gave one of them up. Maybe the end game is just getting Christian those belts, not necessarily the Canelo fight, because they don't know that they can get him the Canelo fight, but maybe they can get at those belts.
WBC's not stripping Canelo.
And he just satisfied a mandatory challenger for the WBA in Edgar Berlanga. They're not about to order another one.
Not right away.
They're just moving their pieces on the board, putting them in position to pick up any vacant titles Canelo might discard.
They're just keeping Christian in the queue.
I like Christian. He's a good TV fighter. Makes for exciting fights. He's got his limitations as a fighter, but all fighters do. Though I don't get the sense that you can really turn him into a star. A big marquee attraction. I don't get the sense.
Not him.
But maybe Jaime Munguia. Tenuous reports that Jaime is done with Golden Boy Promotions and he's all in with Top Rank. Now him...
Yeah, you can turn him into a star. You absolutely can.
It's not exactly a secret that there's a plan in play to put Jaime Munguia in the ring with Christian Mbilli next year.
Depending on what does or doesn't happen in the career of Canelo Alvarez, who I don't think has many years or many more fights left to give to the sport of boxing.
You have to wonder about that. If it were Jaime Munguia versus Christian Mbilli, two pressure guys, two pressure fighters, man oh man would that be an action fight. I like Jaime in that fight. He's got more fights, more rounds in the bank, against the better caliber, better quality of competition than Christian. He's more experienced, he's been a champion before, even if it was some years ago down there at junior middle. That's still an experience that Christian doesn't have. I like Jaime to beat Christian.
I think he stops him.
Just stopped unbeaten Eric Bazinian. He's about to fight Ronald Gavril south of the border before this year is out. And if he fights Christian next year, I like Jaime by knockout. If he were to beat Christian, then he'd be the #1 guy via the WBC and the WBA. Maybe what all of this is really about is putting Jaime in position to pick up those belts. Because like I said, you'd sooner turn Jaime into a draw in America than you would Christian.
I don't want to go left field with this, but you can't guarantee Christian a Canelo fight. We know that.
And they know that. So that can't be the only play.
They ain't stupid.
Whatever they're planning for Christian Mbilli likely also involves Jaime Munguia in some way, shape, or form.
It's just something to think about as Bob Arum makes this announcement.